Hey everybody, welcome back to the OU Daily, actually OU Sports podcast from the OU Daily. I'm joined by Lewis Razor. I'm Colton Sulley. Lewis, let's get into it, man. Had a crazy game to cover last Saturday at home against UCF. OU had a little bit of a scare. Lewis, just talk about your overall takeaways from OU's 31-29 win over UCF.
Well, I think the biggest one is you leave there with a zero in the loss column still. I mean, that's always a good thing. And I think that's kind of what Brent Venables and some of the players that we've spoken to so far in the week have kind of emphasized. Yeah, it wasn't a great game. It wasn't pretty, but, good teams have games like this where they're just not on their A game. Stuff happens. I think what was really surprising to me was you saw a defense that, I didn't know if UCF was going to get 100 yards in that game based on the first quarter. They had one first down, 15 yards offense, and punted four times. Then all of a sudden they run all over OU's defense in the second quarter, keep momentum, and score 29 points. So that was kind of the most surprising thing to me. But overall takeaway is it's a W, so you can't be too mad if you're the Sooners right now.
For sure. And I was also a little bit surprised by the defense. I mean, dominated the line of scrimmage in the first half, obviously gave up some pretty big plays late that almost cost him the game, Lewis. But the offense was also just weird to me. I mean, we all know the running back situation. We didn't know Toby Walker wasn't going to be playing going into the game. So that was a little surprising. But Gavin Sawchuk got it going late, had that big 30-yard touchdown that obviously sealed the game for OU. But also the special teams just continue to be a struggle, which we will talk about here in a bit on the podcast. But Lewis, just real quick before we move on, what's your concern level after the game, and looking ahead to the rest of the season?
Concern level is not really too high for OU, partially because, I mean, let's look at their schedule. Like, the biggest contest that you have is really probably going to be this week at Kansas, maybe at BYU. Who knows? Maybe TCU comes rolling into town on a hot streak. Probably not, but those are kind of the two biggest tests that you have. It's the road games you have left. So the concern level, I wouldn't say it's too high. I think Brent Venables is going to have this team ready to play. I think honestly, scares like this, it's not the worst thing in the world to happen to a team. And I definitely don't think it's the mark of a bad team or a team that's on the decline. So they've still got it, and I think you're still looking at either undefeated or one loss, like coming in the Big 12 championship and a rematch to Texas, because that would be a tough one to win. But
Yeah, I think my concern level is very minimal. I think what you opened up with, just the big plays on defense, were a little concerning, especially coming off a bye week and looking at some of UCF's offensive and defensive rankings, just not too good, obviously. So that was a little surprising, giving up as many busts and coverage as they did. But like you said, I think Florida State beat Boston College by the same score. OU beat UCF, so it's definitely a win. A win is a win. Still 7-0, still ranked number 6 in the country, still have everything in front of them. We've talked to a few players, talked to Coach Venables today. We have a couple things to cover, but first, something that struck out to me was we talked to R. Mason Thomas last night, and it's always a pleasure talking to him. The first thing that players and coaches always bring up when it comes to him is just how much of a freak athlete he is, and we saw a little bit of that on display against UCF. He finally got in there, finally got healthy. He's been dealing with an ankle injury, Lewis. But what did you see, not only from him, but him, helping the defensive line, bolster the pass rush against UCF, and how big can he be for the Sooners going forward if he's able to be in the lineup every game?
well, I mean, the last year, really much pass rush has probably been at its best. Maybe not so much UCF, but definitely as far as the Texas game goes, that's the best you've seen OU's pass rush for sure. I mean, they got a season high in sacks. They were pressuring Quinn Ewers all day against a really solid offensive line, mind you. So I think he adds a lot of talent. I think this defensive line has a lot of talented guys. You got him, PJ, even like Trace Ford, who had a hit in the first quarter that everybody in the press box gasped when they saw that because he just crushed the running back. But you got him, Rondell Bothroyd. You got guys on this defensive line. I think early on you saw the criticism of, they're not getting to the quarterback enough. There's not enough talent here. But really, I think we're seeing that was kind of overblown. And R. Mason definitely adds a new element to this team.
Yeah, for sure. And then you have a guy like Ethan Downs that has a sack in each of his last 3 games, I think, or something like that. I think he's got 4.5 on the season. It's time to talk special teams. Lewis, you've written about it. You've written about it at length all weekend to start this week. The Sooners, made the move to go away from Josh Plaster, who really struggled against Texas. We saw a big improvement in the punt game with Luke Elzinga. Talk a little bit about that, but also just when is it time to start a new kicker? When is it time to start, holding tryouts out in the South Oval?
Well, I was about to say you're going to have to start holding open tryouts if he keeps missing. I mean, listen, Schmitz misses like the one against Texas. We had a great view of it. It was 5, maybe even 10 yards short. Like it wasn't close. All right. That was, and Brent Venables said that there was like a gust of wind that picked up when he kicked it. The two against this past game against UCF, they honestly were pretty close. The second one was like Schmidt, he thought he made it.
Yeah.
And that's interesting for him because he had that same controversy last year in the West Virginia game.
Well, in the Texas Tech game in overtime down there at the end, a lot of people thought that one went in.
That's the one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's always tough with kickers, especially when they're missing, not by much. Even his first one was close, but I mean, it's got to be soon. OU special teams as a whole, when you look at them compared to the rest of the AP top 10 and the rest of the college football playoff contenders, it's not even really close. So they got to get it together. And I think it was a real bright spot that Luke Elzinga came in, did what he did, 5 punts, 4 of them inside the 20, average of like 50 plus yards. I think that was definitely a bright spot. But Zach Schmidt, I'm not saying bench him yet because what Brent Venables said today was right. There's not a lot of depth at that spot. There's not a ton of options.
Yeah.
But definitely keep your eye out for that because that's something that could make or break a game. And we saw that against Texas. It almost broke them.
Yeah, and if UCF makes that 2-point conversion, that's 6 points that OU doesn't have. So we could have went to overtime there. Let's talk a little bit about the running backs. Brent talked about them today. I wrote about them today on OUdaily.com. We've talked about it every week on the pod. It seems like it's not getting much better, although I did say, earlier Gavin Sawchuk was a bit of a bright spot, but you have Javante Barnes, who's, still trying to rehab from that foot surgery he had in the spring. Saw him early in the season. He must have, we don't know for sure, but I mean, you got to think that he either re-injured it or something in those first couple games. Marcus Major got the most carries against UCF, but Brent said he's dealing with a banged up shoulder. Gavin Sawchuk looked better than him, especially late. Tawi Walker was dealing with an in-house suspension. Brent did say he'll be back and available against Kansas, but the first half of that UCF game, I mean, you had people on Twitter, calling for Lebby and DeMarco Murray to try Caleb Hicks and Dalen Smothers. I mean, it just wasn't rolling in that first half. It took forever for the offense to get it going. I can't remember, it's been a long time. I've been, watching OU football for a long time. It's been forever since, an OU football team didn't have an identity, in the running game.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny because beginning of the season, I know we were talking when it was kind of like before the depth chart came out, when it was kind of like Javante Barnes, Gavin Sawchuk, those were the main 2 names. We were talking about this dynamic of like what we saw with Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon, and that would have been perfect. But now you got 4 guys who like nobody's really establishing a rhythm, especially not consistently, like game after game. You could argue, I think that probably Tawi Walker when he's ran is when OU's run game has looked the best. I mean, he's a beast of a dude, definitely. I think he can definitely be part of a 1-2 punch. But I'm not sure if he's like a workhorse. And that's kind of what they've been stressing that they want to look for. Jeff Lebby's been saying it for a minute. He wants to really establish a number 1 guy. Maybe it's Tawi after the in-house suspension. Who knows what's going on there? but it's something to keep your eye on moving forward because you just can't have lapses like you saw against UCF where you can't get the running game going at all in the first half. You're averaging like 2 yards per carry or something. It's going to put a lot of strain on Dylan Gabriel and on the receiving core who's already without Andrell Anthony. It's going to put so much pressure on them, so much pressure on so many different people. So I think there are a lot of elements to it. I think Jeff Lovie's play calling could definitely help them out more than it's been doing in past games, especially against UCF. But overall, somebody's got to emerge as that guy in the room.
Yes, for sure. And we got something else to talk about here. I mean, me and Jason talked about it last week. Me and you, I think a TikTok went viral of you talking about this, but Lincoln Riley, USC, another loss. I mean, it's just kind of funny at this point. I mean, can kind of see it coming. What is he 0-3 against Utah now? But just, I mean, I picked him to make college football playoff preseason. That's looking stupid now. I mean, no defense. The offense can't seem to find a rhythm. Lewis, what do you make of what's going on over there in Southern California? And let me ask you this, because I think I said this last week on the pod. To me, I think Lincoln Riley is going to have to look himself in the mirror. I really do. I think he's going to have to change his philosophy. He keeps saying in these post games, like we've won a lot of ball games, we've won more than we've lost, and I'm just like, with his philosophy of how he coaches, and I'm just like, is that the expectation at USC to win more than you lose? I mean, he's the one that came out preseason, saying that they don't want to finish second.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be. It definitely shouldn't be, and that's not what USC fans want to hear. That's not good for anybody. I gotta admit, I overestimated USC. I really did. I kind of thought their offense was top three in the nation, that they could overcome the defensive struggles that you see. I thought that they were just playing down to their competition when they almost lost to Arizona. That it was just an offensive lapse. They'll pick it up. But man, these past couple weeks, it's been bad. I mean, it's been like uh, in a Pac-12 conference that's really good this year with a lot of different teams that are competitive. I mean, Oregon, Oregon State, Washington, all these different teams. They're going to struggle down the road, and I'm not sure that we've seen their last loss of the season. So
No, I'm not either. And I think this Pac-12 is really good and a lot better than those Big 12 schedules that Lincoln, obliterated with such a good offense but a terrible defense. Let me ask you this. I know it's hard to fire coordinators, especially in season, and it's hard to fire a guy you've been loyal to for so long, but like at some point when it's not working, it's not working. Do you think and obviously we're pretty aware with the whole entire staff over there at USC, but how much longer does Alex Grinch last?
it's so tough to say because, like, I mean, these conversations have been going on for years. Even when he was at OU, not performing very well, it was like, when is Alex Grinch? When is it finally too much? When is the defense putting way too much on the offense and you got to get rid of them? I don't know the answer, to be honest, because Lincoln's been loyal to him for so long. I don't know if Lincoln like truly thinks that it's not him, that he's not a problem at all, that he's a good defensive coordinator. I have no idea, to be honest, because that's kind of what his actions are saying, that he keeps defending him, keeps going with him year after year, will not fire him. So it's going to be interesting down the road to see what happens. But I think you're right with such a competitive Pac-12. I think it could be a full loss year for USC
Yeah.
because this team has not looked good the past really for 4 weeks now. They haven't looked good at all. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens after this year. Certainly, some changes have to be made. Maybe it is Alex Grinch time. Who knows?
Yeah, and then just last thing I'll say about USC, I really do believe, and I think a lot of people around the country believe, like Caleb Williams' window was, Lincoln Riley's best opportunity to win a national championship, make the playoff. And appears that's not going to happen. So, have the best player in the country, it still can't get it done. It's tough. And, he doesn't have the easy Big 12 schedule to run through anymore to get to the playoff. But talk about another team that didn't look great on Saturday, Texas. And everybody was talking about during the OU game, OU was a little hungover from OU Texas. I think that's a little true, but I also think I was true, down in Austin with the Longhorns. Obviously, such a shame that Quinn Ewers got hurt who knows who we're going to see, either Malik Murphy or Arch Manning. But Lewis, what'd you think of Texas's game against Houston this weekend?
Yeah, it was weird because they start out really, really hot, and you think, okay, this team's going to hang half 100 on Houston and just bully them around, kind of, and really get revenge for the Red River rivalry. But it didn't go that way. They just kind of started to lapse really in that second quarter and never got into too much of a flow after that. So, but like you said, the Quinn Ewers injury is huge. I mean, I really think that's detrimental to Texas. Their schedule going forward, it's not too hard. They've played their toughest game against Oklahoma, but man, and especially if you're talking Big 12 championship availability, it's tough. And also, if you look at the Big 12 standings, there's no guarantee that Texas gets in right now. I mean, it's Oklahoma at the top. They've got no losses in the conference. And then it's I believe, four-way tie between Texas and a couple other teams. So we'll see what happens, but hope for the best for Quinn Ewers, no doubt. And that's just a huge injury for Texas.
Lewis, we're going to be heading to Lawrence on Friday for what's another 11 a.m. kick. I think that's going to be 3 in a row. And then I think Black Friday is versus TCU is also 11 a.m. Arkansas State was 11 a.m. Cincinnati was 11 a.m. I think I saw something on Twitter. OU had the most 11 a.m. kicks in the country. What do you make of that? And then
I believe it.
obviously Bedlam's looking like it's going to be 11 a.m. as well. They exercised the 6-day window. I think looking at the schedule, 2:30 and 6 o'clock windows are pretty packed. Could be looking at 11 a.m. in Stillwater as well.
Yeah, that'd be insane, man. That's just not right. I mean, Bedlam is a game that is meant to be played at night. I remember as a kid watching that game, it was always 6 p.m.
And
So
OSU's playing good football right now.
yeah, no doubt. And especially the last Bedlam, potentially the last Bedlam, or it looks like for the distant future at least. It's just, it would be such a shame. But I mean, hey, the Big 12, you can't help but think, is the Big 12 sending a message right now to OU and Texas that we're not going to give you the primetime slots? We don't like that. Because, it's tough to believe that OU would not have the most 11 a.m. games. Like, Texas, Iowa State, UCF, every game except SMU, if I'm not mistaken.
And
So
Iowa State.
Iowa State was 11 a.m., wasn't
Was
it?
it?
Oh, it was 2:30.
Yeah, I think so.
That's right. Yeah,
So,
a
well,
little
and
bit.
Tulsa. Tulsa was 2:30.
Yeah, I'm tired of covering these games while tired. You know.
Yeah. All right, let's preview Kansas. It's Kansas week. I think the latest on Jalen Daniels is that he's progressing, but he's doubtful. I think it's going to be Jason Bean that starts, but Jason Bean's a stud. Whoever the Jayhawks trout out there, it's going to be a tough test for this OU defense. It's been talked about all week how Kansas, plays with tempo, can do a little trickery, kind of like UCF last week. They're 5-2. Only have 2 losses, both of them in the Big 12. They've won some good games. Lance Leipold has this program playing very well. We saw it last year. Lewis, what are you scouting from Kansas looking ahead to Saturday?
Yeah, well, I want to hit on what you touched on. Lance Leipold, what a job he's done with this program in just a couple of years, turning them around. But I mean, yeah, if it's Daniels, then we're in for a really good matchup. Jason Bean can still obviously hold his own. He's a really good backup when you think of him like that. But I think you're looking at a lot of deceptive plays, like Brent Venables has mentioned, like everybody's mentioned throughout the week. I know you didn't handle him very well against UCF. They let up a lot of big plays, blown coverages. I know Ethan Downs was talking about what was the term he used, like
I
I
crimes.
eye crimes. That was it. So OU's got to avoid them this week, or else they're going to be punished by a Kansas offense that's explosive. They can run the football. They can do a lot of different things. So I'm intrigued for this matchup. I know it's going to be wild and rowdy in Lawrence, Kansas, and I'm excited to go to it.
Yep, for sure. Kansas Jayhawks. Trying to think if there's anything else I needed to note there. I don't think so. Lance Leipold might be the next head coach at Michigan State, but we'll see. Predictions. Let's do it. Lewis, who you got?
I'm gonna ask you to go first on this.
All right, let's do it. I'm gonna go. Obviously, OU wins. I think, although I think it's gonna be a close game, like we just talked about. Kansas's offense does a lot of stuff. Lance Leipold has totally changed the direction of this program. I think this season could be their first winning season since 2008 under Mark Mangino. They've got a big time stadium and facility upgrade coming in the near future. If Leipold decides to stay, we'll see how long he remains, but he seems like a pretty loyal guy. So Kansas is, headed in the right direction. They've got perhaps their best team in years. Hopefully that stadium's packed. I think it's sold out, which is, a rarity. Usually when OU goes up there, there's really nobody in the stands, but it's going to be a cool atmosphere. I've never been. Um, I think, I think Dylan Gabriel in the offense improved with having Tawi Walker back in the fold helps a lot. I think the defense fixes what they called eye crimes last night. Dason McCullough, Ethan Downs, they were very critical of themselves when we talked to them this week. I think the defense figures it out and gets back in form. I'm gonna go OU 38, Kansas 20. I think OU holds them, stops them for most of the game. Maybe towards the end of the game, Kansas gets another score on the board, but I'm gonna go 38-20. OU wins it.
Yeah, I was thinking something really similar to that. I was actually thinking 37-20 before you said that. So I'm gonna blame you there for
We
stealing my.
always have we always have similar scores.
It's always within like at least three or four of each
Yeah.
other.
We
Nobody's
need
ever been
Jason.
right this season.
We need Jason's 52-5.
Yeah, something wacky like that, some sort of safety. Um, I think along the same lines, like I think OU's defense really stands up here. They faced a somewhat similar UCF offense last week, and I think they really learned from the mistakes they made in that game. Kansas's defense, I'm not too convinced that they're capable of stopping OU's offense consistently. I think Dylan Gabriel has a good game. Nick Anderson probably finds the end zone again because that's what he's done the past 5 games. That's what he does. Um, I'm. It's tough not to say something similar. I'm gonna go OU 41. Give me Kansas 24. So
All right, there you have it. Colton Sulley, Lewis Razor. We will have you covered in Lawrence on Saturday. Check out oudaily.com. We'll have you covered the rest of the week as well. We always have content churning in. Tune into our post game pod that we do. It's usually posted on YouTube right after the game. So keep it with us. We'll see you guys next week. Appreciate it.